into the world of transformation. And these walls? They're more than just wood and paint. They're stories waiting to be told. Every cracked tile, every faded wallpaper has a whisper of history. Today, we're diving into the Grandmillennial revolution, a design journey that bridges generations. Imagine your grandmother's living room, those intricate patterns, the memories woven into every fabric. Now imagine bringing that magic into the modern world. This isn't just renovation. This is resurrection of memory. This is how we reconnect with the spaces we call home. Get ready to see design through a different lens.
Welcome in, everybody. Today we're going deep on Grandmillennial design, our main source. A blog post from Aaron Michaels Services, a renovation company out there in Buffalo.
Sounds interesting.
It is. They're really trying to explain this style. We'll be looking at what makes it tick, the origins, the key elements.
I'm all ears.
And we'll even touch on how to apply it in your own home.
So it's like vintage, but with a modern twist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not your grandma's house, but it has that cozy, curated vibe,
Exactly. And it's more than just a trend. This blog post argues that Grandmillennial style is like a reaction against all that stark minimalism we've been seeing.
Oh yeah, like the all-white, bare minimum look.
Yeah, that's the one.
People are definitely craving more warmth and personality in their spaces.
I agree. And this blog post even calls it a nostalgic journey.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like every piece in a Grandmillennial home tells a story.
And that storytelling aspect seems really central to Aaron Michaels Services, at least from what I'm getting from this blog post.
Totally. They're not just contractors. They're presenting themselves as curators, creating these really personalized spaces.
Smart move. It's like they're tapping into this desire for something more than just a basic renovation,
For sure.
They're selling an experience, a feeling.
I think they're definitely onto something. This blog post does such a good job of weaving in their services.
Yeah.
But they also give a ton of valuable info about the style itself.
I was just noticing that.
Like when they mention vintage wallpapers or antique furniture, they immediately connect it back to their expertise in sourcing and restoring those pieces.
Yeah, it's subtle, but effective.
Total.
They're not just saying, hey, we can renovate your kitchen. It's more like, we can help you create a kitchen that tells your family's story and reflects your unique style by incorporating these Grandmillennial elements.
I love that.
Oh.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of this style. The blog post lists a bunch of key elements, and I have to admit, some of them are making me question my own minimalist tendencies. I'm kind of drawn to the idea of using chintz and floral patterns. What do you think?
It's interesting how florals are being reclaimed in this style. They're often associated with femininity and domesticity, but here it's like a move away from that gender-neutral minimalism.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's bolder, more expressive, and layered.
I like that. It's like rebelling against the idea that everything has to be sleek and sterile. And speaking of bold, this blog post is all about those bold patterns, especially in wallpaper.
Wallpaper can definitely make a statement in a Grandmillennial space.
For sure.
It adds instant character and history. Plus, you can find such unique vintage patterns.
Especially if you're willing to hunt a little.
Exactly.
And that's where Aaron Michaels Services comes in again, right?
Totally.
They're the experts in sourcing those vintage finds. They even mention having extensive vintage design knowledge, which I think is key if you really want to nail this look authentically.
Yeah, it's not just about slapping up some floral wallpaper. You have to understand the nuances of the style, the different eras, how to mix and match elements to make it all work together.
You're so right. And this blog post goes beyond just listing design elements. It offers some practical renovation strategies for different rooms, too.
Oh, tell me more about that.
For instance, in the living room, they suggest creating a gallery wall with family heirlooms.
What a great idea.
Yeah. It's a way to personalize the space and tell your family's story through objects.
So much more meaningful than just generic artwork. And it ties into the whole idea of layering in Grandmillennial design.
For sure.
It's about mixing textures, patterns, and objects to create a space that feels rich and inviting.
And it's not just about vintage pieces either. This blog post is all about balancing old and new. Like in the kitchen, they suggest pairing modern appliances with vintage-inspired details, like a farmhouse sink or open shelving, to show off antique china.
Exactly. It's about creating a conversation between different eras. The old feels fresh and the new feels grounded.
I like that.
And speaking of kitchens, the blog post has some great tips on choosing materials that really complement the Grandmillennial aesthetic. They recommend natural materials like wood, stone, and copper. They add warmth and timelessness.
That makes so much sense.
Oh, and we can't forget about lighting. The blog post makes a big deal about choosing the right fixtures. To really enhance that grand millennial feel, chandeliers, sconces, and pendant lights, especially with vintage-inspired details, they can totally elevate the space.
It's funny you mentioned vintage lighting,
Yeah.
because you might picture something, dusty and outdated. But the way this blog post talks about it, it's about finding classic pieces that have been updated.
Right, like reimagined for how we live today.
Exactly.
You can find vintage-inspired fixtures that use energy-efficient bulbs, and they have updated wiring, but they still have that old-world charm.
It's all about that balance, right?
Yeah.
Honoring the past but living in the present. And speaking of balance, the blog post talks about the challenge of making sure a grand millennial space feels authentic and not like, a museum.
I can see how that would be a concern.
Yeah, you don't want your home to feel like a time capsule.
Exact.
What do they say about that?
Well, the key is to incorporate modern elements and personal touches, things that reflect your own style.
Makes sense.
And the blog post gives this great example. They talk about pairing a sleek, modern, smart thermostat with a vintage ceramic vase.
I love that.
It's a small thing, but it says a lot about the Grand Millennial approach.
It's like those unexpected little touches. They create visual interest and a sense of playfulness.
It's like saying, I appreciate the past, but I'm not living in it.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this style so appealing. It's not about following strict rules.
Right, it's more about finding those pieces that really speak to you.
And creating a space that feels uniquely yours.
It's about curating your own personal history through objects and design choices.
I love that. And speaking of curation, the blog post has some great tips for finding those unique vintage pieces, especially if you're on a budget.
Oh, yeah, they really emphasize thrifting, estate sales, and online marketplaces.
They're like treasure troves for affordable vintage finds.
Right. And it's not just about finding the pieces, it's about seeing their potential, even if they need a little love.
I see what you mean.
The blog post talks about Aaron Michael Services and their expertise in restoration.
Oh yeah, they're really good at that.
And that's a key part of the whole Grand Millennial ethos.
It's about giving those old pieces new life, a second chance to shine.
Absolutely. And it's sustainable, too.
Oh, for sure. It's the opposite of disposable culture.
Yeah. It's about cherishing what we have and finding beauty in the imperfect.
And that's a message that really resonates with people today, especially millennials who are more and more aware of their environmental impact.
Right. It's a win-win. You get a unique and stylish space, and you're being kind to the planet.
I'm impressed with how this blog post blends practical advice with a lifestyle message. It's not just about renovations, it's about a way of life.
It's like they're selling a story, not just a service.
Exactly. And that story is about coming home to a space that's warm and inviting and full of personal history.
And they're tapping into that desire for comfort and connection that we all have.
I agree. And they're doing it by positioning themselves as experts in this specific design niche.
Right. They keep mentioning their extensive vintage design knowledge and their ability to help clients achieve that authentic look.
It's subtle marketing, but it works.
Yeah, it's not pushy or salesy. It's genuinely helpful and informative.
And it makes you want to learn more about their services.
I think that's what makes this blog post so successful as a marketing tool.
I agree.
It goes beyond just listing services. It builds trust and speaks directly to their audience.
It's a great example of content marketing done right. They're providing real value while subtly promoting their brand.
And it's clearly working.
I'm already picturing myself calling them for a consultation.
Me too.
Even if you're not ready to hire them right now. You'll remember Aaron Michael Services when you are ready to go Grand Millennial.
They've definitely made an impression.
So what would you say is the biggest takeaway from this blog post for someone who's interested in Grand Millennial style but doesn't know where to begin?
I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not about perfectly copying a specific look. It's about finding inspiration from the past and using those elements to create a space that reflects you.
I love that. It's about creating a space that feels authentically you.
Exactly. It's about embracing those pieces that have meaning and using them to create a home that tells your story. Yeah, they've definitely tapped into something. It feels like a real cultural shift, People are really yearning for something more meaningful, something more personal in their homes.
And this blog post does it in such an approachable way. It's not just for, hardcore design people,
Yeah, totally.
It's for anyone who wants their space to feel like a real home.
You know what else I noticed?
What's that?
How well written it is. It's so engaging. It's not just a boring list of tips. It's a story
Right.
with vivid descriptions and those relatable anecdotes.
I felt like I was chatting with a friend who just happens to be, a Grandmillennial design expert.
Exactly.
And I love the photos they included. They really bring the whole aesthetic to life.
Oh, those photos are crucial. They give you a sense of the possibilities. You can really see the range of the style.
And they've subtly woven in those calls to action throughout the post,
Oh, yeah, good point.
giving their contact info, encouraging consultations, mentioning their location.
It's smart marketing. They're not pushy, just presenting themselves as a resource.
I agree. It's why this blog post is so successful. It's informative, inspiring, and genuinely helpful. Not just a sales pitch. It's like starting a conversation.
That's content marketing done right, for sure.
Building relationships, trust, providing value.
Totally. And Aaron Michaels Services nailed it.
Absolutely. They created a piece of content that really resonates, showcases their expertise, and subtly promotes their brand.
It's a win for everyone involved.
So as we wrap up, what's your final takeaway from all this whole exploration of Grandmillennial design?
I think it's a reminder that our homes are more than just places to live.
Yeah,
They're reflections of us,
they are.
our stories, where we come from, what we value.
This blog post has really made me think about how to bring more meaning and personality into my own space.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's about creating a space that tells your story, a space that feels truly authentic to you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And if a little bit of Grandmillennial charm helps tell that story, well, maybe it's time to embrace those floral patterns and vintage finds.
I think so.
Maybe we should even give Aaron Michaels Services a call.
Maybe we should.
Until then, happy decorating, everyone,
Happy decorating.
and happy storytelling. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We had a blast, and we hope you did too.
Before you go, let me leave you with one final thought. Next week on the Aaron Michaels Services podcast, we'll be covering a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. Tune in to find out what it is. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Signing off. Take care, Buffalo. And remember, when you need a helping hand, call Aaron's Handy.